The heavy iron gates of the South Carolina Penitentiary creaked open on a humid summer morning. Beyond them, in a cold, dimly lit chamber, a 14-year-old boy sat silently, his small hands trembling in his lap. His name was George Stinney Jr, and within moments he would become the youngest person ever executed in the United States. But how did a child find himself strapped to an electric chair, condemned by a justice system that refused to see his innocence? It was the spring of 1944 in Alkaloo, South Carolina, a small working-class mill town divided by railroad tracks. On March 23rd, two young girls, Betty June Binnicker and Mary Emma Thames, rode their bicycles along a dirt path, searching for wildflowers. As they pedaled past the Stinney home, they spotted George and his sister Amy sitting outside. "Do you know where we can find maypops?" one of the girls asked, referring to a local passion flower. The conversation was brief, innocent. By nightfall, the girls never returned home. A frantic search ensued, and the next morning, their battered bodies were discovered in a muddy ditch. They had been brutally beaten with a heavy railroad spike. The town wanted justice, or rather, revenge. Hours later, police arrived at the Stinney home. George and Amy were home alone when officers barged in, accusing him of murder. Without hesitation, they dragged the 14-year-old away. Locked in a small room at the local sheriff's office, George was interrogated for hours. No lawyer, no family, just a terrified child surrounded by men demanding a confession. The police later claimed he admitted to the crime, though no written or signed confession ever existed. George's trial commenced on April 24, 1944, at the Clarendon County Courthouse. The proceedings lasted just over 2 hours. An all-white jury deliberated for 10 minutes before delivering a guilty verdict. His court-appointed attorney presented no evidence, called no witnesses, and made no cross-examinations. The judge sentenced George to death by electrocution, and no appeals were filed on his behalf. On June 16, 1944, George was led into the execution chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary in Columbia. Standing at 5 feet 1 inch and weighing approximately 95 pounds, his small frame posed a challenge for the adult-sized electric chair. To accommodate his stature, he was seated on a Bible as a booster seat. An officer asked George if he had any last words to say before the execution took place, but he only shook his head and said, "No, sir." The straps were too large, and the oversized mask slipped off during the execution, exposing his tear-streaked face to witnesses. A second surge of electricity coursed through his frail body. Then a third. Moments later, George Stinney Jr. was dead. For decades, George's case haunted the conscience of the nation. The so-called confession he gave was never written or signed. There was no physical evidence tying him to the crime. His trial was a mockery of justice. It took 70 years for the truth to be recognized. In 2014, a judge overturned George Stinney's conviction, ruling that his constitutional rights had been violated. The ruling acknowledged that George's trial had been unfair and his execution unjust. The ruling came too late to save him, but not too late to clear his name. The story of George Stinney Jr. is a chilling reminder of the dangers of rushed justice and wrongful convictions. He was just a boy, a child who should have been playing in the fields of Alkaloo, not strapped to an electric chair. And while history may have finally acknowledged his innocence, the question remains, how many other injustices have gone unseen, buried beneath the weight of time? George Stinney Jr. never had the chance to grow up, but his story will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more gripping true crime stories. See you in the next one.